So, what we're seeing right now, the DOJ's focus when it comes to money laundering is very much tied to enemies of the United States. And what do I mean by that? It's not necessarily people that we are at war with, we're not at war, but we are very, very focused with national security. And the national security focus that's going on with the Department of Justice is permeating across all levels of the Department of Justice and how they are prosecuting certain cases. So when we're talking about money laundering, they are looking for major actors in the cartel space. We can turn on the news and we can see who are they going for, what countries are they looking at: Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, China, North Korea. So because our international world has and the ability for people in the United States to financially transact with foreign actors, we're seeing a much bigger focus on trying to find domestic individuals, people in the United States who are moving a currency, whether it be through cryptocurrency, through cash transfers, wire transfers, etc., that have ties to these national security and these foreign actors. So money laundering is really transforming into a moving money and converting money for profits here locally into more of a national security focus. And that's becoming a very large trend in our country and in the prosecutions that we're dealing with. The rise in cryptocurrency has directly correlated with the rise in money laundering cases, as well as the sophistication of the agents within the Department of Justice, whether it be FBI or another three-letter acronym, IRS. There are specific task force that are dedicated to cryptocurrency because cryptocurrency has become the way not only for individuals across state lines, but especially across international lines to transact, often in completely legitimate ways. But we're seeing more and more cases now involving foreign actors in China, North Korea, in South American countries that are moving either cash into our country in exchange for cryptocurrency, but more commonly, the other way around. We're seeing a lot of focus from the Department of Justice on foreign actors who have cryptocurrency and are using regulated and unregulated exchanges of cryptocurrency in order to get money into the United States for various means. When we're talking about money laundering and using cryptocurrency in order to achieve that, we're talking about money laundering and moving illicit funds that most often under our current administration, when brought by the Department of Justice, is tied to some sort of larger unlawful activity. It's not so much like you see in Scarface where they're just cleaning money or throwing it in a launder machine. We're talking about people who are trying to get unlawful money into the United States via lawful means. And with the rise in cryptocurrency, the ability to trace the money is a whole different level. We're not just looking at bank records anymore. We're looking at different exchanges. We're looking at mixers. We're looking at the use of centralized or legitimate exchanges like Kraken or Coinbase that are being used allegedly by illicit entities in order to clean money and to move it into the United States for whatever their alleged criminal activity might be. So it has created a much more complex landscape for the money laundering investigations that we're dealing with. And so mixers are getting a lot of government attention right now because they can be used. Mixers are a totally legitimate service. Really, a lot of the most common platforms, exchanges that are Kraken, other kinds of cryptocurrency exchanges can be used as mixers. We call those centralized mixers. Now, those are legitimate, but the ability to use those centralized mixers, those centralized platforms in order to disguise or mix the source of the funds has become a very common trend. The Department of Justice and through their various agencies have essentially put quite a cap on and have really locked down on the illegitimate mixers, the illegal mixers. They have a lot of sources on those. They've brought a lot of prosecutions on those. But now we're talking about legitimate mixers, legitimate centralized mixers, which can be any kind of exchange platform where allegedly individuals involved in illicit conduct are using these to disguise the money. So it's really a new form of money laundering in the cryptocurrency space. It's not so much just you send me cryptocurrency here in the United States and I'll turn it into United States dollars or fiat. One for one transactions. Now we're talking about a whole new way to commingle various sources of funds, sometimes illegal funds and sometimes clean funds, and then disperse it. So it's a way to commingle funds, and it's an extra layer that the government is dealing with in order to be able to trace cryptocurrency to various sources. Money laundering is very commonly, or has traditionally very commonly been taking unlawful money and either spending it. There is one statute under 1957, United States Code 1957, that is strictly spending more than $10,000 in an unlawful way. Then you have the 1956 United States Code 1956 money laundering cases, which have to do with the disguising, concealing, or use of disguised or concealed proceeds in order to further some other kind of unlawful activity. So, your 1957 money laundering, you're spending unlawful money, having $10,001 that you earn from drug dealing or unlawful investing and spending it on a car is your more traditional. But with your 1956, we're talking about a much more sophisticated form with higher penalties, which happens to be 20 years of concealment. So there's a lot of bank analysis. Bank records is the bread and butter of money laundering investigations for the Department of Justice in this space. But as with the rise of cryptocurrency, they are having to adapt to that because we're talking about people who in Oklahoma have the same access that they never would have had before to somebody who is in Hong Kong in order to establish these international transactions. So there's really, it's an emerging area that the government is catching up on, but they're not all the way there yet. Recently, we've actually seen a much less aggressive approach from the Department of Justice regarding money laundering when it comes to professionals, or we can say white collar individuals, people who are in the business of conducting financial transactions when it is in the financial transaction or white collar space. So we used to see a lot of money laundering charges attached to healthcare fraud charges or wire fraud charges. Now, with the current administration, we are seeing a much less focus on individuals who are, let's say, already alleged to have been committing certain levels of complex white collar fraud. And the focus now has been on individuals who are money laundering in order to facilitate the goals of what the Department of Justice and the United States currently considers its enemies or its targets, so to speak. So the focus has much more become on smaller scale individuals who are laundering for much larger scale, more traditionally unlawful organizations like gangs or cartels, or just China and countries that the United States has specific problems with, certainly Russia. So we're seeing smaller scale cases, but tied to much larger organizations than just your traditional individual who made a lot of money through a Ponzi scheme or investment scheme and is now moving that money. That's not the main focus right now.